Let's move.
All right, so to learn variables, I'll be creating a new file. Let's go ahead, create a new file. Go to our Python file and I'll name it as variables, okay? As soon as I say variables, I press enter. As you can see, it already gives us the extension of .py. So this is the extension of Python files. Okay, so whenever you're creating any file and you want to make it a Python file, you just need to say .py at the end. It will be changed into a Python file. This is the extension of uh, any file in Python. All right, so now we're talking about variables. Okay, so in Python or in any other language, we have four kind of variables that are very used oftenly. All right, so what are they? So let's first discuss what is the first kind of a variable. I will be writing the whole concept here, and at the end, I will just comment the whole concept. Okay, so let's comment first, and then we're learning about what are variables. So let's first discuss about our first type, right? So this first type is known as the integral variable, okay? Integral variable. So what are integral variables? So integral variables are those variables which have integer values in them, right? So we already know what integers are. So all these numbers who do not have a decimal point in it are called as the integer values. They can be 770 or 700 as long as they don't have any decimal point within them. So we can say integral variables are those variables.
Could you please make the screen a little bigger? The font size?
Yes, just give me a while.
Twenty or 22 is fine.
All right, can you see it now?
Yeah, much better.
All right, good. So we are saying like the first type of variable is the integral variables, and these are those variables which have integers in it. Okay, so before explaining the variable types, let me first tell you what variables are, right? So in computers or in any programming language, when you want to store something, right? So if you want to store something in the computer's memory, you want to use a particular kind of storage capacity in the whole computer, right? And that capacity or that particular storage device in computer language is called as the variable, in which you can put any value and then you can change the values as much time as you want, right? So we have two kinds of data structures in computers, right? So first one is constants, which have the values do not change, like like any numbers like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All of these are constants. And then you have variables. So variables are those data structures in which we can change the values as much as we want, right? So the first kind of variable, as I already discussed, it is the integral variable. All right, so let me tell you about the next one. So the next one is, as you might have guessed, the next one will be, let me first say the second type. The second type is about the floating point variable. So floating point variable. All right, so what a floating point variable is. So a floating point variable, as the name suggests, it will just be holding those values which have floating points within them, which have decimal points within them, like 5.5, 3.5, or any other values that you may think of. All right, so are these variables, are those variables which can store floating point in them, right? Okay, so we have talked about the first type, we have talked about the second type. Let's first try to give you some examples of these. Okay, so variables works like this. If you want to assign something to a variable, you first need to write the name of that variable. Okay, so the name can be anything. Like if we just want to have a practical example of an integral variable, I can say age, right? So age will always be, in some cases, will always be in integer values, right? So we can say age equals to any age. Like, for example, he is 22 years old. So you can say age equals 22, okay? And then let me give you another example of floating point variable. So floating point variable will be assigned just like this, but it will have its name changed, or it will have its values changed, right? So if I just say, how about price? So price of anything, like if you talk about price of an egg, so that might be changed, and we can say, how about 2.2? Okay, so this is how you assign some values to variables in Python, right? And as you can see, there is a little yellow line under it, and if you want that to be removed, you can give a space here and a space here. Okay, so there we go. So this was the first example of age, and then we have the example of price. The age variable here is, as you already know, it is an integral variable. It is integral variable. And if we talk about this one will be a floating point variable. Right. And after that, we can just give a space here and a space. Okay, so this is the example of our integral and our floating point variable. Now, before moving towards my third type, let me first tell you what are strings. So strings uh, in any other programming language, as we already know, strings are always anything that you write within those quotation marks, right? So if you want to use those quotation marks, you can give anything, like each and everything that is available in your keyboard. If you write it within those quotation marks, that will already become a string. Okay, so if I just say, let me just take a string as this. So we can say John, William, and then lives in 22nd Street, and his email address will be like John at Gmail, right? So in this example of a string, what I have done is I have used all the characters, like all the alphabets. I have also used the numeric characters. I have also used the special characters, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain that a string can have anything. Like it can have special characters in it. It can have alphabets in it. It can have numeric characters in it as well, right? So now let me tell you what is a string variable, right? So this here comes the third type of the variable. Third type. Let me comment it out first. So third type is, as you might have guessed, it is a string variable. So what does a string variable do? So it just holds string values in it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just say, so we can say, are those variables which have strings in it. Okay, just like that. All right. So and then we have. I'll give you the example of string variable. Just after I explain the fourth type. So Let me write the fourth type as well. So fourth type is called as, and this one is different. This one is called as the Boolean variable. So what does a Boolean variable do? So as you might have some idea about the Boolean values. So Boolean values or the Boolean algebra. So it always works like this. It have only two values, like a true or a false, a 0 or a 1, right? So, but in Python, Boolean values always have a true or a false in it. All right, so it will have either a true or a false in it. All right, so I have explained you the whole four types of variables. Now let me give you another example of our string variable. All right, so talking about a string variable. So let's just take any particular example of a string, like data that you might be storing within a string. So as I've just gave you the example of John William who lives in 22nd Street, right? So we can also say it using a variable. I can save that information into a variable. So how about I just say name? Name is equals to John William, just like that. Okay, so now this name is a string variable which have a string stored in it. Simple as that. Okay, and the next part, the next fourth type of variable is the Boolean variable. Now the Boolean variable always answers a particular condition. It always answers a particular statement, right? So for example, if I say, is it cold outside? So you will say true or false, yeah? Uh, is my statement true or false, right? So it can only have two answers. Okay, so if I just say, if I want to say is cold, so I will just say is, and then now here comes another learning part. You can't just say is and cold. Okay, so which means that you can just say is cold equals to true or false, right? Because we can't give spaces between our variable's name, right? So we can't say is and space cold. We can say is underscore cold, like this. So is cold equals to true. Good. And the next thing is, you always need to keep that in mind, that true or false always starts with a capital T, right? So you can say a true, or if you want to say a false, let me just copy and paste it again. And if you want to change that to a false, you need to say this F A L. So F always, or T that you are starting from, always needs to be capitalized, right? So capital T will be a true and capital F will become will make a false, right? So this is the whole concept of our variables. I have given you some examples. I have also introduced you with the definition of all these variables. So this is the whole concept of variables. I hope you understand it. If you have any questions, you can ask.
It's all right. Is there any other type of variables?
No, I think we only use these four type of variables in our whole program, in the whole
Okay,
Python, as much as you know it.
great.
Okay, so can we keep it till that today? Because I
Sure,
have another session.
sure, sure. No problem.
All right.